This is the first history of modern British boxing since the bare-knuckle heyday of the 19th century. It starts at a time when several South American countries were bigger forces in professional boxing, and the entire Eastern Bloc was more formidable at amateur boxing than the British. In 1970, make no mistake, it looked like the British was simply not very good at the sport they invented. Not one British boxer held a world title at the start of January that year. What's more, the men in charge of the British boxing business had no idea where their next world champion would come from and often acted like they never cared. It has all changed. Less than 50 years later, at the very end of 2020, the men in charge of the British boxing business had 13 world champions to keep busy. Boxing in Britain had its own television channel, and fighters could sell 90,000 tickets in just a few hours. British boxers have also won 5 gold medals at the last 3 Olympics. In the previous 12 games, British boxers had won just 2. This is not a renaissance, it's a revolution. The fighters, managers, trainers, promoters, fixers, losers, jokers and officials are gathered here, mostly for the first time ever in a book, to have their story told. Every major fight and boxer from the 1st of January 1970 to the 31st of December 2020 is here. There is a Bunny Johnson for every Frank Bruno, a Rocky Kelly for every Ricky Hatton, and a Gary Jackie Mellon for every Ken Buchanan. It starts with the grizzled veterans of the smoke-filled arenas in the 70s and ends with the glittering new breed of modern boxers. They all fought for the same reasons, thrilled the same fans, and left the venues with black eyes, glory, and some with great wealth from pay-per-view revenue. There are others that slipped away under the cover of night, their hats pulled down over their battered faces, and their pockets empty. They are all here, crucial to the history with their wins, losses, lunacy, tragedy, and triumphs. There are nights and fights when over 20 million people watched on terrestrial television as men became heroes and household names forever. There are also trips to foreign fights where terrible judges, hostile crowds and crooked operators ruined British boxers. There are nights that ended at dawn with champagne bottles all over the table, and other nights that ended at dawn in lonely vigils under the dim lighting of an intensive care unit. Not every fighter can be rich, unbeaten and hold a world title, and not every promoter can put on sell-out shows in massive indoor and outdoor arenas. Some of the boxers failed on both sides of the ropes, some walked away without a full explanation, and many have simply vanished. I have collected the names of the lost, neglected and overlooked too, and include hundreds of them here where they belong. And they belong next to British greats like Lloyd Honeyghan, Nassim Hamid, John Conti, Lennox Lewis and Joe Calzaghe. I realised very early that most of these fighters, even some from only 15 and 20 years ago, have never appeared in any books, never had their story told, and had simply faded away. There are others that shone brightly for such a brief time that a constant reminder of their brilliance never grows old. The men and women that guided and inspired the fighting men also play their part. The old-fashioned boxing press, too, has an important role that is often ignored in the modern business, where the lines have been blurred by online correspondence. The impressive written words of the travelling scribes in the 70s and 80s are often the only remaining history from lost fights. I have gathered together all the proper voices, all the right sources, and used hundreds of my own notepads. I settled an argument on the spelling of a boxer's name from the early 70s by looking in my old autograph book. It was there, and there was no final E. The dead boxers and fight game characters speak here, often as they move from amateur to professional to retirement. They get their history alongside the winners and losers they knew, fought, promoted, trained and matched. There are great fighters in these pages that are remembered for the first time, others that seem never to have been out of the news, and yet others that have been saved from general obscurity. They all form a unique story, a big, fat, short history of British boxing.